Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce RTX 5090 in Monster Hunter Wilds. This one is the Founders Edition model of the card. I am running it with the latest Nvidia drivers and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups, GPU-Z, and over on the left, I am pairing it with the Ryzen 7 9800X3D and 32GB of RAM. Now today I'm gonna do things a little bit differently, guys. We're gonna be running the benchmark of this game, which is free right now. You can try it out for yourselves if you want to, and the game is also in beta, as you can see. Later on I will try the beta as well, but it seems like the benchmark run is actually based on the latest version of the game, and the beta is based on the previous version of the game, which was running absolutely terribly, guys. Now, going over the settings, I am starting at 4K resolution here with the maximum settings, DLAA over here, no frame generation, 100% resolution scale, and you can take a look. Everything over here is set to the maximum preset, basically, and turned on, aside from variable rate shading, which doesn't turn on with ultra settings. So there we go. All right, I'm going to start counting the FPS here to see the 1% lows from our benchmark run. And, well, it's actually quite lengthy, this one. It looks really good at the same time, by the way, especially when they're eating by the end of the benchmark, as you'll see. But yeah, we're starting at native resolution, 4K, 100 FPS right here. Not too bad. I can see some frame time spikes there on the frame time graph, which is an indication of stuttering, of course. And I have ran a single benchmark run before, okay? So this is not a fresh start of the PC. This is actually after playing this once already. But I also wanted to mention the system requirements here. They have updated them slightly. The recommended requirements, GPUs, are now a bit lower than what they were before. They asked for a 4060 previously, I think. Now it's a 2060 Super, so a little bit of an improvement there, but they still ask for frame generation on the recommended requirements, which is absolute BS, my friends. That is not how recommended requirements should be with the frame generation, and that's to hit 60 FPS. So in reality, without the frame generation, you'd be hitting 30 FPS, and I tested that a few months ago in the previous build of the game, once again in the beta. But yeah, it was pretty terrible, okay? Not recommended requirements worthy at all. So it seems like they are not really listening to the community and, well, to my videos and other people's videos as well in regards of frame gen shouldn't be included in system requirements. It's a frame smoothing technique, and it shouldn't be relied on, period, actually, for anything, okay? It introduces a lot of input lag, especially if your baseline FPS aren't at 60, and, well, with the Ryzen 5 3600 from the recommended requirements, it will be CPU bound all of the time. Also, over in this area, we start seeing a little bit of fluctuation on the GPU usage side of things. You can see it there going down to 95, 94% at times. That could be a slight CPU bottleneck, but I'm not sure it is, because CPU is also really low in terms of utilization. But it could also be because they didn't optimize the game to take advantage of a lot of cores and threads on the 9800X3D or a higher core count CPU. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, we keep seeing some spikes or some down spike. How do you call it? Never mind. You still see some drops in GPU utilization to like 94, 95% pretty often in this area. And this wasn't with a lot of people running around in that settlement or camp area that we came across here in the benchmark run. Yeah, that's gonna be really intensive, especially with online players and stuff. It will wreck your FPS, I think, still, okay? We shall see a little bit later in this video when I test the actual beta online and move around, get a feel of the frame generation and the input lag and stuff like that. But yeah, just keep that in mind. This is streamlined benchmark, so it's going to be a bit less intensive than the actual game. Another thing that I want to touch on, by the way, look at that VRAM allocation. 20 gigabytes. Yep, and 20 gigabytes almost of RAM allocation as well. That's pretty insane, guys. This is without ray tracing enabled, okay? I did not enable ray tracing for this test, and once we enable RT, I'm not sure if 24 gigabytes are going to be enough, honestly. This is quite a bit of a surprise because, you know, like most of the world textures aren't really that high quality in my opinion, at least from what I saw previously in the previous beta, you know. And you know, this is just a desert right now. Maybe the game suffers from a memory leak issue, I don't know, but that VRAM utilization is really, really high indeed. You shouldn't need a 5090 or a 4090 or a 7900 XTX to be able to play this at 4K maxed out settings, especially when the maxed out settings look like this, you know. It's, again, nothing special. I think Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I have been testing a lot recently, looks quite a bit better than this in some areas, okay? The characters actually look better in this one, but yeah, quite disappointing FPS here and performance overall, in my opinion. And if you guys want me to cover this game more often with other GPUs, do let me know, because, well, I'll do that. Now, this is what I was telling you about. This part over here, it looks really good with the food. I mean, and this one here as well. Really nice. So yeah, it's a pretty game in some areas, but not super impressive, or actually I would say it's not impressive at all. In the end, we got 88 FPS average there in the MSI Afterburner Rivet Tuner overlay, 88.97 in the game, so it's fine. 30,387 score, if you guys are wondering, and if you want to compare it with your GPUs, for example, and excellent. Of course it's excellent. It's the best PC in the world for gaming at the moment. It needs to be excellent. 1% lows though, 61, little bit iffy there, but yeah, that's it. And I think next up we should try it with the ray tracing enabled, right? For FG still disabled, DLEA, ray tracing, let's turn that on high. If there's a GPU that's meant to run ray tracing, it's probably this one, right? So I'll set it to high over here. And this is still with 100% resolution scale and maxed out settings everywhere else. I will restart the game to make sure that it applies properly. But yeah, let's try that out. It's interesting that when you launch the game, it prompts you to enable frame generation. I do not want frame generation at the moment, okay? Oh, it disabled ray tracing and it set DLSS back to quality. So we can't restart the game after changing settings because it will change it back to whatever it thinks it's better for you. I don't like that, but it's just a benchmark tool, so I'll let it slide, all right? So I guess, well, this is still at maximum settings over here, by the way. I'll leave it there, and I'll enable ray tracing on high again. Come on, there we go. And we're still at 4K, of course. And the thing that I'm most curious about is that VRAM usage and allocations, because, yeah, now it's ray tracing. It's really intensive, you know? It usually consumes a lot more VRAM, so let's see how it does here. 18 gigabytes to start this off. And by the end of the benchmark tool, it actually increases, of course, as we saw. And well, guys, I guess I'll just let the benchmark run now, a little bit fast forwarded as well, and when I have something interesting to say, I'll just stop it and say it. And you know what? Aren't these FPS very similar to what we saw before? Is ray tracing even enabled at the moment? It says custom on the graphics settings, so it must be enabled. Let's see if it affects our overall score. It was 30,000-ish previously and 88 FPS on average. It should be lower now with ray tracing, of course, but this scene right here seems to be very similar to what we saw before. Okay, back in this area now, getting down into the 60s already. GPU usage should be something interesting to keep an eye on as well, because ray tracing usually makes games more CPU intensive, as well as GPU intensive, of course, but yeah, it's a bit more CPU bound sometimes. But here, still seeing 99% GPU utilization, 98, 95 again, a little bit of fluctuation there. Not too bad, though. You know what? It's kind of surprising, guys. This is a bit better than what I was expecting with ray tracing enabled, you know? And VRAM-wise, it's kind of the same, 20.5 gigs of allocation here. All right, so now it's dropping a bit further than it did previously, I guess. Okay, we got a little lake over here, which should have ray-traced reflections, I think. And those reflections, well, they're there, but they're not very high quality, I guess. They could be a bit better looking. But, well, at least it doesn't kill our FPS completely, so there's that. And again, 22 gigabytes of VRAM allocation, and 20 gigs of usage there, dedicated usage for the game, you know. Yes, if the RAM usage is actually lower, isn't it? Maybe it was higher before, I don't know. That's pretty weird. Yeah, some of the textures here in this area don't look all that impressive to me, guys. Just, yeah, they look kind of dated, honestly. And the final test over here. Lots of lighting as well. Looks really good with the ray tracing enabled. Again, not too different from what we saw previously. A couple of big spikes there in the frame time graph, by the way. Actually, it just keeps happening. It's really annoying. But yeah, that's about it. So we did see a difference. I'm going to stop it there. In the end, we dropped from 88 to 82 FPS on average. And instead of getting 30,300 something points here on the score, we got 28,000. So that's a very minimal difference. It's less than 10% difference in terms of the score, at least, compared to the ray tracing off. And I think if you have a 5090, well, just go all out and play with maxed out settings. DLAA, it's not going to drop from 60 frames per second, at least in the scenarios that they showcased here in the benchmark run. And lastly, I want to try it with quality DLSS here and maybe some frame generation at the same time. Let's see how it does. Okay, that's a lot of FPS, guys. Obviously, in terms of input lag, it's going to feel really good. We shall find out a little bit later when I play the game again. But yeah, the baseline FPS without quality DLSS, they were already at 60 plus. Enabling FG over that would be pretty good still in terms of latency and stuff. But here, with quality DLSS over what we saw on native, instead of 82 FPS, we'd probably see like 105, 110 FPS average. And with FG over that, that's gonna be really smooth feeling and responsive in terms of the input lag. And in terms of the visuals, it's looking pretty good. I mean, again, the game itself is not impressive visually, in my opinion, in some areas, especially in this one right here. And aside from like the faces, maybe like the characters are well made, especially the other one with but in terms of the graphics quality with quality DLSS plus FG on top of that, it is looking pretty much the same to me. I'm not seeing any ghosting, any motion blur caused by frame generation, any weirdness in the picture actually. There's a bit more screen tearing right now because we're outside of the G-Sync range now, but this is pretty similar to what we saw with DLAA at 4K resolution. And let's just wait to see all of those vegetations down there, the yellow vegetation, and maybe it's going to drop more there and also look a bit fuzzy because of the FG and quality DLSS as well. Here we go. I really like this scene right here. I think it looks really pretty in this scene, okay? Over here, it's visually appealing and pleasing to me, in my opinion. Everywhere else, I think like Kingdom Come Deliverance runs and looks better compared to this. But anyways, taking a closer look at the grass here. Maybe it's a little bit softer looking than previously. And maybe it blends a little bit over there, for example, at this distance. Yeah, you can see like the individual leaves as well as you could previously without DLSS quality plus FG, but I mean, it still looks really good overall. If you're pixel peeping, you might find imperfections here and there, especially on those finer details. But if you're not pixel peeping, no problems, in my opinion. Once again, I would have no issues playing like this. And you might be thinking, of course you don't have any issue playing like this. It's a freaking 5090 and a 9800X 3D. And yes, I know, but in some games, quality DLSS plus FG gets pretty soft and stuff. And I don't really like the look, but in this one, it's definitely fine. It's very, very sharp still. Although over there, I can see a bit more aliasing than there was on the LAA. Palm trees at the distance, you know. But again, it's a minor thing. I think it's worth taking that hit, small hit to visuals to achieve 160 FPS average almost. Also, guys, going over 24 gigabytes. Oh boy, look at that. Almost 25 gigabytes of VRAM allocation now. That's because FG actually consumes more VRAM than non-FG, you know. So yeah, 4090, I guess, would actually be running out of VRAM slightly at these settings. Oh boy, that's pretty insane actually to think about. Maybe it will work a little bit different in terms of allocation and stuff on a lower VRAM amount card, and it just uses everything that it can on a 32 gigabyte card like the 5090 here, and maybe it won't really be a problem at all with the 4090, but wow, I think that's pretty interesting to see at 4K resolution, quality DLSS and FG, 25, almost 26 gigabytes of VRAM allocated. That's pretty crazy, right, guys? Oh boy, 200 FPS. Very nice. And this is it. It took me a little bit longer to start benchmarking in this one, so that's why we see a 1 FPS difference here. But yeah, not a problem, guys. And yeah, that's it for the benchmarks part of this video. Let's play the game now. Okay, so going over the settings first, let's try DLAA first. And as we saw, the ray tracing didn't really make that big of a difference. Where is the ray tracing setting though? So this version of the game doesn't have ray tracing from what I can see, guys. What? That's a bit of a shame, but you already know it's going to be like a 6 FPS difference. Maybe a bigger difference in settlement areas though with a lot of people because of that CPU bound scenario. But, well, let's play like this, I guess. Ultra settings, 4K, no ray tracing, unfortunately, and DLAA. And this is the area that I was telling you about, with more people around here, lots of NPCs as well, and we are CPU bound with a 9800X 3D at 4K ultra settings, guys. GPU usage is fluctuating quite a bit there. We're getting 60s. If I look at the sky, you can see FPS are unlocked, of course. But yeah... So you need a 9800X 3D to play the beta 2 of this game at 60 plus FPS all of the time. If you don't use frame generation, that is, of course, with FG, it can bump up things by a lot. But yeah, this... I don't know. I was expecting this since the last time that I tried this was with the 4090 and 7800X 3D, and that was getting below 60 FPS over there in that area, and the CPU bound scenario once again. So again, this is kind of what I was expecting, but seeing it drop so far is still very underwhelming, guys. It really is. Should we start killing this bastard? Come on. Come on. Let's go. Actually, oh my god, it drops into the 50s. It was a big stutter though, so maybe it doesn't count. No, it is actually dropping into the 50s. Look at that. on a 59. These aren't extreme setting or like super high settings compared to other titles. This is not even using ray tracing, unless they baked in ray tracing by default and didn't put an option for it in this beta 2. But yeah, supposedly ray tracing is turned off, yet we are still dropping from 60 FPS while fighting these guys. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It is exactly the same thing as the previous beta. Very underwhelming in terms of graphics, in my opinion. Very underwhelming in terms of performance. At least it's good to see that they've improved things with the benchmark run, and it's running better, supposedly. But again, that is a built-in benchmark run. Usually, games like Cyberpunk, for example, if I run the benchmark run there, and if I go drive a car around a little part of the city instead of doing the benchmark and then compare the two, the driving around will be like 20 FPS lower than the benchmark run. So I'm not sure if when this game comes out, it will actually be fixed and running well on multiplayer as well, and you will actually see the FPS that you saw in the benchmark run inside of here, or if it's just going to be the same thing as this. Because again, the benchmark didn't have people running around, and this does. I'm very scared for the future of this game, guys. You basically need frame generation even on a top-end system like this with a 9800X 3D and 5090 to achieve 60 plus FPS, because it drops into the 50s. How crazy is that? In terms of input lag, this is FG 2 times, and it's the old version of frame generation as well. I'm not sure if you can override this with the Nvidia app, actually. Let me check. Yeah, no, this doesn't show in the Nvidia app, guys, because the game is not really out yet. All right. So you can't really override this to use DLSS 4. With DLSS 4 and the transformer model, it would probably look a lot better than it's looking right now, because it's quite soft even with the LAA. Thankfully, quality DLSS doesn't make it much softer, so it still gives a very decent look and similar look to this, but I can still see some flickering there on the shadows on that tree. And this is ultra settings. I mean, does this look impressive to you guys? To the point where this is getting basically the same FPS with frame generation as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 without frame generation and maxed out at 4K native? This is not impressive at all. But again, 3-month-old build of the game. That's what we're running right now, so there's that. It's still very, very disappointing. Okay, let's do quality DLSS, I guess. If I disable frame gen and use just quality DLSS, it's going to get 90s, okay, not too terrible. What if I go back to the other area? Okay, yeah, there we go. We're getting the same pretty much. Can you stop, Jack, please? Can you... How do I get out of Jack? I should have seen the controls before coming here. But anyways, guys, it's getting us 70s, 80s, a little bit better than before, but the thing is, there's no one here now. We saw a bunch of names previously in the lobby from people that were in this same server with us, but now nobody is here, so of course the FPS are going to be higher. Okay, I just joined another server to showcase the FPS thingy again, and well, with more people over here in this part of the game, we see the same 60s to 70s, even with DLSS quality enabled. I think it's enabled, right? No, it's not. Why is it not enabled? Okay, now it is enabled. And we're seeing 70s. All right, lower GPU utilization. We're seeing 70 FPS now, 80s with DLSS quality. It's a little bit better than what I was expecting, actually. But for some reason, it didn't change this previous. It's pretty weird, actually. Anyway, let's try the frame generation in this area now. And yeah, it gets a bit softer once again, 130s. Pretty smooth, pretty playable. A couple of stutters here and there once again, but yeah, that's the experience now with the frame generation enabled. And I guess this is the way it's meant to be played in this particular title, because they have taken FG into consideration for the system requirements as well, which is absolutely ridiculous to me still. But yeah, that's what they've done, guys. It's pretty terrible. And that's just so people think that in these areas with a ton of other players that are super CPU bound, well, it's not too bad because it's still 100 FPS, right? No, definitely not. Developers, please. It's only like, what, 15 people here? How is this so intensive to put a 9800X 3D to its knees? But well, guys, we're back to DLAA here without frame generation, getting those 60s. And I mean, it also dropped into the 50s, I just remembered, while fighting the other monster down there. It's pretty rough of an experience in this one. The state of this game is pretty terrible. At least it was 3 months ago, and I'm not sure if it improved, again, because of the fact that the benchmark run doesn't have online people running around everywhere in the lobbies. So I'm still very scared, guys. I'm not sure if it's going to be much better than what we're seeing here. All right, now we're with quality DLSS here. You know what? Running around here, quality DLSS does look quite a bit more muddy than it was before. GPU usage fluctuating again. It's a mess. It's the same mess as I saw 3 months ago. The benchmark, though, was pretty good, but I wouldn't completely trust in that benchmark run once again. So thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed and got something useful out of this. Yes, even the best PC for gaming in the world can't run this at 60 plus 100% of the time, 4K Ultra, no ray tracing with the LAA. All right, it still dropped into the 50s. That's really annoying to see. And yeah, with these graphics, I just don't know what they're doing, really. Oh boy. This needs a massive performance update.